And these apps are actually changing our kids' brains as their brains are trying to develop. And it's making it really hard for them to focus and to concentrate and to sleep and all the symptoms that we're seeing in terms of behavior. So the good news, as you mentioned, is we can rewire our brains, our kids' brains. We can reset their habits and guide them. Again, it's the tough love thing. They will hate it.
Hey, thanks for coming. Welcome to the Love Shack.
Hey, welcome to the Love Shack. It's a little old place where we get together, explore fresh perspectives, and eavesdrop on juicy conversations to discover the things that really matter in life and having a little bit of fun along the way. This is episode number 112. We're going to be talking about raising children because let's just face it, raising children has some significant impacts on our relationships. And I just got to ask you, how you holding up? If you're new to our show, welcome. It's great to have you here with us. I'm Stacey Bartley, and I'm the co-host of the show, and I am here with my cute little co-host and lover, Tom. And welcome. It's great to have you here with us.
How are we holding up with raising our tribe?
Well, we're into grandparents now, and I would say that road is earned, but it's also a lot easier than the day-to-day life of raising children, wouldn't you say? I mean, I don't have to worry about homework and cleaning your room and if you're brushing your teeth and some of those things. And I think today, for sure, I know today raising children is more challenging than ever. In fact, there's some staggering statistics as we step into our conversation today that school-age children ages 2 to 8, you can expect that 1 out of every 6 children will struggle with a mental health challenge. Among them are anxiety, depression, ADHD, and what we call in my world behavioral development disorders, which that's a terrible name. I just got to throw that out there. But 1 in 6, like that's staggering. And when it comes to young adulthood, let's talk about 12 to 18 for adolescents. Again, we've got anxiety, depression, taking the front runners there, but substance abuse becomes a way of them coping with this. And of course, suicide as a result of that is climbing at an alarming rate, especially, according to the CDC and this material. So I know in my work, it's always a topic of conversations with my colleagues and at conferences. It is a problem that we are facing right now. And now we're starting to understand a little bit about why. And we know that a lot of the culprits there are many things. And we have brought a very important guest, a good friend, an incredible person that does a lot of great work in the world of productivity primarily. And he surprised us by writing a book. So let me take a minute and introduce our incredible guest today. He's been in Love Shack with us once before from his first bestseller. But as I already said, Daniel is a productivity consultant. He's a professional speaker, and he's also an award-winning author. He's passionate about helping busy people make space in the whirlwind of digital life by shifting the way people look and work at life. So Daniel's first book is Space Makers, and if you want to check that out, we've done an episode. I should have looked up what number just so I could give you a shortcut, but it's on unplugging, unwinding, and thinking clearly in the digital age, which is such a contribution to our relationships and to ourselves. This book won the Australian Business Book Award for Personal Development in 2021. And now his latest and greatest book is called Raising Tech Healthy Humans. And it's a practical handbook to help parents reset their children's tech habits in an effort to help parents provide a great start to their children's lives. Daniel lives in Tasmania, Australia. He joins us from down under today. And he also has a wonderful wife, Kylie, and 3 beautiful children. So Daniel, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you back in the Love Shack with us today. And we're going to talk a little bit about not productivity, but raising those wonderful babies that sometimes cause us to pull our hair out. So I got to ask you initially, what inspired you to write this book? You're a productivity consultant, primarily in corporate America. How in the world did you come up with the inspiration to write a book about parenting?
Yeah, great question. The book kind of just happened, I think, a little bit by accident, but I speak a lot to adults, to leaders, executives, professionals who are using technology as part of their role, maybe working in hybrid or remote environments. and wrestling with digital overuse. So they're uncomfortable with how much time they spend online and the impact that technology is having on their heart and their head and their habits and their relationships. And yet when I speak and then have a Q&A segment, the number one question that almost always comes up, first or second, is, what about my kids? Can you help them make space? Because they're always on their devices and doing TikTok. And, you know, we have this great way of pointing outwardly and rather than pointing inwardly at our own habits. And yet, you know, it just became more and more apparent. And obviously I have kids, you know, my oldest is 15, my youngest is 11, and they're surrounded by technology, and I can see the wrestle that I have in my own life with tech and kids. And because I spent 7 years researching the first book, I just knew a lot about tech and kids. And I thought, actually, it's time for me to put some things to paper.
I have my mind, when we start talking about technology, always rewinds to the late 90s and early 2000s when I had 2 teenage boys in my home. And I remember technology just kind of starting to overtake our lives. And honestly, there was nothing written about it. We weren't necessarily cautioned or know certainly what we know now, you know, more than 2 decades later. And I just remember a tremendous amount of conflict happening inside of me because I truly didn't know what to do. I didn't know if it was okay or not okay, or how to approach it, how to limit it. All I knew was it was something that instead of us skiing or hiking or climbing, which was so familiar to us in our adventures, my son wanted to play on video games. And I even drug him to Moab, Utah, where it's just like the mecca of rock climbing and rafting and for an entire summer. And I cannot even tell you how many, you know, pieces of fighting and conflict and such that we would go through in just trying to get my then 16-year-old boy out of the condo that we were renting down there. And so, gosh, I think we're so blessed to live in a time when we understand so much more about technology and social media and the impacts that it has on our children. And I just think more and more we're becoming empowered to do things differently. You know, as we say, we progress as we go, right? That's how evolution happens. So I think your book is so important. I loved reading it. There was several times where I would think to myself reading it like, yes, I'm so glad you're saying this. Oh, this is so spot on. So let's share it with our audience today. And so glad that you were inspired. I can't think of a better person to write a book on technology than yourself. So thank you for the contribution that you've made to us all. Maybe we ought to start with, you mentioned in the book, the importance of tough love. And sometimes that's a really tough place to go with parents. We're not quite sure how to handle it. You know, we don't want to be controlling. We want to let the kids to express. And gosh, if they want to choose to do, you know, a whole entire day on the iPad or the PlayStation, or I'm trying to think of some of those remote devices now. I mean, they're getting smaller and easier to pack and you can pull them out anytime. I feel like the benefit looking back was that it was, you know, it was a console, you know, it wasn't easy to take anywhere. And I had that in my favor.
You're dating yourself.
See that they were using it rather than being implanted into their iris. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about tough love and how you see that and how maybe you implement it into your own home. So we can learn from.
No, thank you. So I originally started the book with a very practical framework, which I'll talk about later, called the Starter Framework, which is really about how do you actually make good decisions about tech with your kids and start them up well so they grade up as they grow up. And yet, after writing that, the main section of the book, I realized actually there are a lot of things and assumptions or parenting assumptions that actually underlie the way in which I see parenting all up. Because, I mean, there are so many different approaches to parenting, right? And some work really well and some work less well, or some fit different personality types. So I wanted to be a little bit honest by reflecting on what's the thing behind the thing. You know, what are the beliefs or assumptions that I come with as a person or as a parent that undergird the way in which I approach parenting full stop, because those things will then impact the way I shape technology around my kids. And I wanted to put that on the table just to be honest. So the first one I realized is actually tough love parenting, or the expression I use is raise adults, not children. And so when I first had a child, my very close friend and mentor, and he's a bit older than me, he already had probably about a 6-year-old child at the time. So he said, "I don't forget, your role isn't to raise a child, it's to raise an adult." And that really stood out to me. And he wasn't saying that we don't want to let kids be kids and let them muck about and have fun and have no responsibilities and be playful, because play is such a critical part of what it means to be a human and to develop safety and a healthy brain, a healthy sense of self, and a healthy sense of relationship. So he wasn't saying don't let kids be kids, but what he was saying is when you make decisions day by day, whether it be how you teach them to sleep, how you teach them to eat vegetables, how you play with them, how you teach them to say sorry, or what you expect of them when they make mistakes, what type of jobs that they might do around the house, all the way to how might they engage with screens and what type of content might they see. Start with the end in mind. I mean, that's my productivity background, the old Stephen Covey. And really what we're saying is they're going to be adults one day, and our role as parents is to raise healthy, wholehearted, loving adults who have good moral fiber and who can contribute to the world around them and who have healthy hopefully healthy mental health, and a sense of self and a love for themselves and others. And that doesn't come by accident. In fact, I think if you say to a child, you're the expert on life, and I want you to make all the decisions, whatever you feel you want to do in life is right, which is actually the drift in Australia, at least to the type of parenting that we're doing. Then literally it just doesn't work. I feel like ice cream. Okay, you're the expert on health. I mean, no, you're not. You actually need to eat vegetables. I want to stay up because Mum and Dad stay up. Well, no, you need to get some sleep because you're not the expert on sleep. Like we need to train our kids to be healthy adults. And that's really what tough love is. It's recognizing that actually a lot of the time we need to say no or not yet, set healthy boundaries and limits, with a lot of relationship and kindness and invitation as part of the mix. I'm not talking about top-down
management style,
parenting.
Right?
Yes. Like legalistic, rule-based parenting. I mean, there's a lot of fun and creativity and some flex in our family, but ultimately we are the parents and they're the children, and we want to teach them how to be adults. And that is really, really important if you want to be able to then get to the stage where you don't feel guilty by saying they can't be online all the time, because it's for their mental health, their happiness, and their character development. It's good for their soul, it's good for their mind, but it essentially starts with that idea that I'm the parent, I have parental authority, and my role is to give you tough love and to train you in things you don't want to do so that you become the child and then the adult you want to be. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I totally 100% wholeheartedly agree with you here. I like to think of it as we all need limits. And if we don't learn how to wrestle with those limits when we're children, because our parents set those healthy boundaries for us, it's going to be really difficult as adults to regulate ourselves and to set healthy limits later in life. And I think we all kind of wrestle with that. And I think the more permissive sometimes we get without those boundaries, it's a huge problem in my work with couples and families. Is there is no boundary setting. Like there is, and I like to think of a boundary as where I end and you begin, and that's physically adaptive as well as emotionally adaptive. And if I don't have the ability to identify where I'm at and how I feel in this moment and be able to discuss it, that I'm either trying to override you or I'm trying to please you, we're gonna run into a problem there. And we all need limits. We all need somebody to say, hey, now wait a minute, I feel like you're overstepping my boundary or the way that I feel here. Could you please listen to me? And so I think that's where we learn it ideally is in childhood, because it's a bigger struggle to learn when you're an adult. And at some point in time, it's going to wreak havoc in your life.
And I think it's also, I really appreciate, Daniel, your context around this tough love, because just in most of these types of, I would say these are triggering type words and modalities, if you will. And so everyone has a massive differences of interpretation. But I always like to say, look at the most effective leaders, and my experience is those leaders, their ability to lead and relate and make those around them better. To me, that's the demonstration. So we want to be led by someone that not only demonstrates that, because I would say that's the highest level of actualization is the demonstration of what it is. Then not too many words are needed, but then, we're drawn to that. That's an inspiring energy that we want to, the best athletes, the MVP, are the ones that make everyone around them better. So I think so, as I could not agree, as a parenting role. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot of families that have, and children that are now adults maybe didn't have that presence in their own life. So that's why it's a confusing, construct to get their head around, their mind around, and certainly the implementation of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Culture shifts in as we understand, and what tends to happen is we go from one extreme of maybe culture, which isn't healthy. And in this situation, it's probably, children are to be seen and not heard, that adults are always right, that the importance is to make them follow the rules. And that's the kind of institutionalism that we see from the 1950s and 60s.
Right.
And then what we do is we push back against that. We have the flower power movement, the free love movement, and all that kind of stuff, the anti-institution movement. And we basically say, no, actually, rules are actually wrong. And the way to find freedom and joy and health is to follow your heart and to use your gut and to experience your emotions. The typical anthem of our day, which came from America, thank you very much, is no right, no wrong, no rules for me, I'm free. Like if I get rid of all the rules, all the constraints, and follow my heart, well, that's true freedom. And that is flipped into parenting. Now, there's some truth in that, in the sense that, of course, we want people to be able to experience their emotions and not repress them, and to be guided by their gut to a point. But not as a 2-year-old, when all you want is, chocolate, yum. Do you know what I mean? Like, following your heart is not going to lead to good character development. We need to rebalance it. All of our culture's gone too far. And, and like you said, in terms of leadership, it works for adults. If you follow your heart and spend what you want, well, then you'll be in debt, not financial freedom. If you follow your heart and eat whatever you feel like, and don't, force your body to be physically active and to stretch beyond its capacity in ways that feel uncomfortable, well, then you'll be sedentary and obese, and you'll end up having less freedom, less energy over time. It happens in relationship. If I follow my heart, I guarantee I would have had affairs by now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't follow my heart because I committed to love my wife. And so it's the same with tech. It's the same with all of life. And we want to train our kids into, being in touch with their emotions, knowing where their boundary stops and where it starts, to be able to express themselves and be individuals, but not to follow that kind of crazy, binary expression that actually rules and regulations and structures and discipline will limit freedom. In fact, that's what gives life in our current cultural context.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Navigating the silent, complex moments of separation or your partner's need for space can feel like walking through a maze without a map. If this sounds familiar, know that you are not alone. This journey, filled with uncertainties and introspection, requires a gentle, understanding guide. Hey, I'm Brooke from Love Shack Live. We see you, and more importantly, we get it. That's why we created the Separation Support Bundle. A collection of resources designed to not just guide you through separation, but to offer comfort and clarity during these times. Our separation guide offers insights and support to help make sense of your emotions and the process of separation. And for those moments when words escape you, our guide on 10 texts to send when navigating space provides thoughtful prompts to help communicate with compassion. Plus, a soothing separation meditation to help ease the overwhelming moments. Because sometimes all we need is a starting point, or a way to start feeling okay again. Remember, you don't have to journey through these complexities of separation alone. Our Separation Support Bundle is here to accompany you, guiding you towards healing, understanding, and most importantly, the renewed sense of self. Visit staceybartley.com/bundle today to access your free separation support bundle. At Love Shack Live, we're all about exploring the real stuff that relationships bring, the good and the challenging. So let's tackle this together, because even in the hardest times, there's hope, growth, and yes, even love to be found.
We're touching on what I call our human navigation system, where we have the ability to think and to strategize, and to understand and make good decisions. And we have the ability to feel, follow our hearts, and have that emotional expression side. And there's a whole discussion about which one is superior or inferior. And what we don't realize and understand is that we need both to rudder ourselves, to find balance, to govern ourselves. And one is not superior or inferior to the other. That's why you have the ability to do both. And when you start putting it on the board, you can start to see their counterbalances to each other, right? So if I get lost in my emotions and I just let that run willy-nilly, as you've described so well, then of course that's not going to take me to the place of freedom or well-being or thriving. And if I'm just logical, and I'm running from my emotions, that can set me up to where I'm now emotionally falling apart. And I see the need for us to understand those principles and to better rudder ourselves by the utilization of our navigation system so that we can navigate through, the ups and downs of life, through logic, yes, strategy, knowing, understanding, good data, good resources, scientific research, etc., learning. And then there's going to be an emotional throw off of that. And that counts too. My mom, when I was growing up as a kid, used to have a timer. And I don't know how she learned this or where she came up. It was just sheer inspiration, but it used to really make me angry when I was a kid. And when something difficult would happen, she would come in and we'd talk about the emotional side of it. And then she'd bring in this timer. It was just one of those old fashioned white ones. And she'd crank on that thing. And whatever you got was what you were left with. 20 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes. And the rules were always the same. You cry and you throw your fit and do whatever you got to do. But when that timer goes off, we're going back to life. You're going to come out. We're going to do homework. We're going to go for a walk. We're going to cook. We're going to get back to living. And I think you obviously don't understand how serious this is, right? Like I should be, flat on my back, crying and able to piss and moan for days, right? Like this is big to me. No, it didn't matter. She'd just crank on that thing and say, I know this is tough. It's really difficult. And she literally taught me not how to get stuck in one side or the other. Yeah. And so when we start talking about anxiety and depression, right, and places emotionally where we get hung up and we get stuck, it's really difficult for us to go to do those things, have those adventures, move our bodies, breathe, take care of the tasks at hand. And we can get so lost in the task that we forget the emotional experience as well. And so it's a tool that I use for my clients, even when they have a difficult time kind of navigating, themselves in that system, to just, set the timer. There's a place and time for both, and both have a role to play in who we are as human beings. Which I think
you could be a productivity consultant with those kind of strategies.
I'll let you do that. I think you're much better at it.
An emotional productivity consultant.
There you go.
But I see. I mean, I have a close relationship with someone who their teenager argues constantly and won't follow anything they say. It is a typical teenage behavior. But what's interesting is they'll often say, they'll put a boundary down, and then the teen will push back against it, and they'll say, we better have another conversation about it. I'm like, well, you've had 5 hours of conversations about it. It's not about the conversation. It's about the fact that your child refuses to accept your decision, which was reasonable and well communicated and good for them. So I'm like, no, it's like probably the timer thing would make sense. It's time not to have another conversation. Mm-hmm. It's done, and you have to learn to accept that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's great, especially when you're dealing with teenagers, to flip it back on them. Like, why do you think I'm doing this? Why do you think that this is a boundary or something that I'm willing to go to blows with you around? Right? Does that make sense to you? So tell me what the difficulty is for you in keeping it. Like, what's the resistance? Let's talk about that. And then you start to have a deeper conversation, and it doesn't become the focus of, are you going to do it or not? Which kind of gets us all into a power struggle. It's like, okay, wait a minute. You know what's supposed to be done. We've talked about it 5 times. Now you need to help me understand why there's such tremendous resistance here, right? Let's have that conversation. Let's dive a little deeper into that. Because, teenagers are becoming adults and they want to make their own autonomous decisions. And that's part of what we run into. And sometimes it's like, okay, if you are hell bent on this and doing it your way and you think you've got this all figured out in spite of my counsel here, I'm going to let you try and fail. So, okay.
But that brings me to an important distinction, Daniel. Share with us, and I know I saw this in your book as well. The primary age of child in your book is what ages?
Oh yeah, so I'm aiming this at preteen, well, at preteens and younger. So I originally was aiming for, let's say, 4 to 12 years old, because it's more about helping set up your children with healthier tech habits and a healthier brain from the beginning. I'm not an expert in child psychology. I'm not an expert in addiction or neurodiversities. So once children are experiencing challenges in many ways, because of tech addiction or tech overload, well, then there are other books that are better than mine. But my heart was to help parents with younger children really start off well. The reason I started with that, and then I've realized actually I'm handing it out to parents and recommending parents buy it when they have their first child or when they have their, a young baby, is because we're giving our kids iPhones and iPads to play with when they're 6 months old. And despite the recommendations, it's already shaping their brain at that young age. And so by the time many of our kids hit 3 or 4 years old, their mental development's already been shaped and changed by how much time they've spent online. So we actually need to start earlier and earlier. But the heartbeat is, yes, before they are teenagers, before they are developing all the complexities and wonders of becoming adults, like you mentioned. It's more about trying to get them well started so that they have healthier boundaries, a healthier brain, healthier emotional control, healthier empathy, so that they have the ability to then self-regulate and have the types of conversations you're having with them, because they've been set up well.
Yeah. And I just want to give a shout out, if by chance you're a listener right now and you're going, great, so it's over for me. I've got this child that's earlier and like I'm doomed. It's just going to be a problem from here on out. And I want you to know that's not the case. There's some really good news in this. If you understand the brain, there's always a way to turn it around and rewire it. Yes, it's going to take some time, but there's no better time to start than right now. So not all is lost. And that goes for us as adults too. That's understanding our brains and how they work is something that we're starting to understand more and more, thanks to science and tech, and the ability through technology to test and to explore some of those understandings of the brain. But what we do know is it is very, very flexible. And yes, there are some things that are set as we are children. But as we work with those, I've seen even in my own clientele and even inside of myself, quite frankly, changes that come about over time. And with my children that were absolutely, those 2 boys I talked to you about, absolutely addicted. I thought, oh gosh, especially as they got into raising families and having babies of their own. But they're continuing to expand and grow and change too. So it's never a set it and forget it, and it's never too late, I guess is what I want to say. So, and the reason why I love your book, Daniel, is there are things that start to spark creativity in regards to how we can approach this conversation around tech, regardless of how old your child is. And assuming that parent role is an important first place to start. And that's why I thought, let's talk about tough love for a minute, because you are the parent. And at any point in time, you can step in and go, okay, I've been a little gone, right? I've been tied up in, making money, being a single parent, going through a divorce or going through some challenges with life myself. As I like to say to my kids, I could be a great mom if I didn't have to deal with myself at the same time. Like that would have been so easy. But that's not the case for us as adults, right? And so many times we're so busy wrestling with ourselves, we don't have the bandwidth sometimes. And then we wake up and come back around and begin to have the bandwidth as a parent and go, hey, wait a minute, what's going on around here? So there's always a great time to be able to step in and be that parent that you have the desire to be, and it's never too late to do that. So I just want to throw that out there as giving some hope to our listeners. Which brings me to the next thing I'd love for you to touch on from your book is there's a wonderful study that you cite from Dr. Victoria Duckley. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that and how you stumbled across that, because the results of what you're sharing with us here kind of coincides with what I just said. There's ways to turn this around and do it differently and begin a new path. So tell us about your findings there with that study, Dr. Duckley.
Yeah, and she would be one of those books I would recommend if you're finding that, I'm uncomfortable already with the types of patterns and behaviors that are in my family, and they're getting to the point where they're becoming quite disruptive, and I'm not sure what to do about it. So she's a fantastic, she wrote a fantastic book, and she's in the States, and she works a lot with, I think she's not a psychologist, maybe anyway, she's a professional she's a doctor in mental health, and she works with kids, and she worked with a lot of kids with pathologies and very significant issues, from depression to even psychosis, etc. But she started to recognize that again and again kids had the same types of patterns, and the irritability and lack of emotional control, the lack of regulation, the inability to sleep, the scattered thoughts, they seem to cross over across multiple different types of diagnoses, and they didn't seem to match the traditional patterns. And therefore, she started to come to the conclusion, she called it electronic overuse syndrome, but basically kids using too much technology and it impacting their mental health in a significant way. So she started to take kids off of technology, having an electronic fast over a graded and sensible 4-week way, and actually without extra medications, or even sometimes withdrawing medications and swapping it for stopping technology. She got, I think, up to, more than a 50% reduction in symptoms in 80% of her clients,
Wow.
which is incredible. And we're seeing this again and again. The explosion of diagnoses of ADHD is actually often to do with an incredible amount of time using highly scattering dopamine, dysregulating devices like playing games online or using TikTok constantly. And these apps are actually changing our kids' brains as their brains are trying to develop, and it's making it really hard for them to focus and to concentrate and to sleep, and all the symptoms that we're seeing in terms of behavior. So the good news, as you mentioned, is we can rewire our brains, our kids' brains. We can reset their habits and guide them. Again, it's the tough love thing. They will hate it at first, because you're actually taking away something that they're addicted to in some cases, or at least really dependent on. And yet at the same time, to go through that process of helping them unwind and experience the best of life outside of that constant churn is actually something that they need and that they want ultimately. She describes electronic overuse a bit like an amphetamine hit, that when your kids are on the iPad, they feel happy, they concentrate, they're focused, they're quiet, they don't move very much, which is lovely for a parent. But then if you take away their screens, if they've got to the point where they really, really are quite dopamine dysregulated, well then they have the low of an addict, and then they need to get back on it, and everything else stops actually creating joy in their life, because the only way to get the dopamine hit is through the flashing lights and the intermittent rewards and the types of addictive designs of these devices. And so once you see those types of patterns, there is a process of helping take kids offline. But again, my book is about raising humans. So I think even as you maybe do a fast with your kids, and please do it in a sensible way. Don't just take the devices away and say you're bad kids. This is where I would recommend books like hers rather than mine. But if you are taking your kids away, you also want to add in what does it look like to have real life? Because I think ultimately this is not as addictive as tech is. I think it's ultimately not a question of tech or screen time or cyber safety or all that stuff. It's actually a question of humanity and the type of human that you want your kids to be and the type of human that you want to be actually. To have a vision of life which is bigger and broader and richer than time on a screen, that of course involves the online world, but also involves climbing trees and riding bikes and laughing together as you drop spaghetti bolognese on the floor and not having to take a photograph of it and post it on Instagram, and being able to play board games and read books, or just enjoy the beauty of silence and watch nature, or even experience the painful emotions of life, which are really necessary to process without then having to pull out Google and actually say, what do I do if I feel sad? Like there's this sense where we are losing our humanity by worshipping the glowing rectangle, and we want We want to put life back into its context, which is big and broad, and then allow screens to fit within that. And so part of the process of taking a child who is already struggling with overuse is not just taking their screens away. That is part of the process, or reducing their screens and educating and having conversations. But it's trying to experience, giving them experiences of a bigger and better humanity, which is what you actually want for their lives. That was a long explanation.
I love it. And I just want
to... It's important to frame that way.
I do too. And I just want to let everybody know that in the back of your book, you give 100+ ways that you can have some fun with your kids to serve as that replacement when you do take that device away. So don't miss it. You know, I would say the book's worth just the creative stimulation, because the stimulation of ideas, simply because when we as parents are working on our devices and our children have been on devices and everybody pulls the devices away, if we haven't been engaged in some of those creative ideas, we go, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I don't even know, you know? And so it's wonderful to have a list that you can use and go to and go, oh yeah, that's right. We can climb a tree and we can go to the park and we can't, oh yeah, I forgot all about that, because that's what we do as human beings. So I really liked that you included a list in the back of the book.
Can I say a quick story on that?
Yeah, please.
My kids found that, and I've printed it. I've also got a free lot of downloads on my website. So we printed it. It's on our fridge. And I must admit, we haven't done all 100 of them yet. Okay, so our kids this holiday, they self-generated it. They said, let's go through it one by one. But even before that, what was funny is I wrote one that said, pick a bouquet of wildflowers. And I don't even know why. I think it was just an idea I had as I was kind of brainstorming ideas. And they laughed and laughed, and they paid me out. They say, a bouquet of wildflowers. They just thought it was so funny. And then, but then the next day I was working in my office, and all three of them came home from school with this big bouquet of wildflowers for me. And they go, we made you a bouquet. And it was funny, but it was sweet. And it was like, the book was worth writing just for that moment.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yes, heck yeah. And I think those are the beautiful outspurts that we miss sometimes when we're stuck in our homes on our devices. It's, as you said, humanity. It's a challenge of and question of humanity. We're losing that. And tech is here to stay, so we've got to learn some better ways to dance with it and raise healthy children. So that brings me to the idea of your starter framework. Tell us about that. And if you would kind of just give us a little synopsis about your protocol, because I think it's worth and serves all of us when we start thinking about how to engage with this idea of being a human being and being able to express and experience what that's like, and know that tech is here to stay. And how do we find some balance with that?
Yeah. And the whole framework isn't to say that tech is bad in any way. I mean, it's part of life. It's a wonderful part of life. But the way kids engage in it needs to be very different than the way adults engage, mainly because their brain is developing and their adult devices designed for the adult world, and therefore we need to treat it quite differently as their younger kids. So the framework is an acrostic. So the first one is start with self, take it slowly, age-appropriate setup, regular talk, tech healthy rhythms, encourage adventures, and rely on others. I do know it, but it's easier for me to read.
Yeah. And if we have notes, it's always easier to go to the notes than try and rely on memory, right?
I'll make something up otherwise. And what it is, it's a number of principles that can really help you set your kids up well from all the way through the ages. And it's not just about tech; it's partly about the imagination of life beyond a screen, like how do you have adventures. But the first one, I think, is actually the most important. And if you're, and this relates to all parents, irrespective of where your children are in the journey, irrespective of where you are in the journey, or even as a grandparent, irrespective of where you are in the journey. I think it's the hardest of all the habits, but in some ways it's the most encouraging because it's within our locus of control. It's completely and utterly within our circle of influence as a productivity, again, as Stephen Covey would say, and that is to start with self, because the technological habits, the digital habits that we pass on in our family and the culture we create in our family will have a tremendous impact in shaping the habits of our kids. And so therefore our own behaviors will impact the behaviors of of our families, full stop. So, I mean, if every time the kids open the toilet door and they see you on the toilet scrolling your phone, well, that's going to pass on something in terms of a value. You know, if every time you're at the table and someone texts or phones or your smartwatch goes off, and you suddenly stop the conversation that you're having with your kids to give attention to a random stranger, you know, sometimes it's like, I did it once and I never did it again. You know, I was having a coffee with a client. I was listening to them. They were having some emotional response and explaining something really deep. And I had my phone vibrate and I just couldn't concentrate on them anymore. I just kept thinking, I need to check my phone, but I also have to do it in a way that makes them feel like I'm listening to them. And I pulled it out and my phone said, congratulations, your screen time is down this week. You know, it's like, ah! The very technology is trying to stop me being addicted are the ones that are distracting me. So my point with Start With Self is that almost all of us are struggling with tech, if we're really honest, and we're not modeling the types of behaviors we would want to model ourselves. And then we point the finger and say to the kids, get off of TikTok and you're spending too much time on your screens. And then you lie on the couch and you start scrolling email and it looks exactly the same. And so I think it's really important for us to examine our own heart, our own beliefs around technology, and in particular to examine our relationship with the online world and the health of that relationship. And I know this is a relationships podcast, you know, so like any relationship, we have a relationship with technology. That was really the foundation of my first book. And like a relationship, it goes up and down. You have good times, you have bad times, you have times where you're codependent and times when you're arguing and times where you're spending too much time together. I remember being in bed with my wife. You know, this is a PG kind of podcast, so I won't go any further. But we were lying in bed and I was scrolling, like, I don't know, the news, and she was playing Candy Crush or Merge Dragons or something. And I realized, actually, we've just spent half an hour in bed with each other, not talking to each other, having a relationship, making love with our phones instead of each other. No more pillow talk anymore. And it's not that it was once, it was actually becoming an every night thing. And I'm like, this is not the way I want to live my life. And this is going to damage my relationship with my spouse. And my kids are seeing it. They come to say, good night, mum and dad. And then we're in bed, you know, talking to a device and having a relationship with Google more than ourselves. And so it's that kind of self-awareness that I'm asking for parents, because that's how you start the conversation and that's how you start creating a better culture at home. Actually, one more point on that. I hope it's okay. But in a really constructive way, practically, it doesn't mean that you have to have it all together. You know, Richard Bach says, we teach best what we most need to learn. And for me, that is absolutely true. You know, I'm the space maker and I wrestle with space more than I feel like anyone. However, the beauty is when you have the honesty and the ability to self-examine your own tech relationship and your tech habits and discover things that you're unhappy about the way you live, don't beat yourself up. But it's an opportunity to shape your kids as well, because there are times that I've said to my kids, you know what? I have been checking my phone first thing in the morning and doing emails when everything's going crazy. I'm meant to be helping you with your lunch. I should be touching base with my wife before we leave. And instead we all yell at each other and we scream and you run out of the door because you're missing the bus and I'm frustrated. You know, this is my fault. and I'm sorry about that. How can I want to change my own behaviors with technology in the morning, but I would love us to do it together, because I think it's something that I haven't modeled well, but I would love us to change as a family. And so how can we shift the way in which we do screens in the morning? Maybe no screens until we've all left for school and work, for example. You know, how can we do this together? So it's not so much about your problem, but it's actually our problem. And in that way, your vulnerabilities and your mistakes can actually help disarm your kids and help them find solutions in an open way, as long as you're willing to follow through, of course, and be genuine in that kind of digital repentance.
Well, and then I think you give a wonderful gift to your kids. You're showing them what it's like to be human and that we do make mistakes and we don't have it all figured out, but we can figure it out together. And We're all on this journey. And so we don't teach our kids that at some point in time they're going to arrive somewhere, that they're going to get it all done and all figured out, that the process of being a human being continues. And you're willing to share that journey with them and show them how to clean up a mess, how to overcome a struggle or a challenge, or show them that you struggle too. And we all have a place that we do, and that's okay. I think those are really great lessons, because if we come into parenting thinking that we've got it all done and we've got to have all the answers and all figured out, at some point in time, as our children turn into adults, they figured out that we were lying anyway, right? And then we set them up for expectations about themselves that aren't necessarily true. And not necessarily true. They aren't true, and that it's okay to make mistakes. And the best way to teach your children that mistakes happen as a part of being alive on this planet that we live on is to show them that you make them too. And that's okay. And then that demonstration of how eloquently you said, hey, I'm struggling with this. This is on me. I take full responsibility. What great principles to pass along to your children by demonstration. So you can't expect kids to do things with tech that you're not willing to do yourself is kind of my net takeaway. Like if you're going to point the finger and say, you can't be doing this, look at your own relationship with tech and make sure that what you're asking them to do, you would be willing to do yourself.
Well, and I just think, again, looking at my own mom, like Stacy's mom, small in stature, and not a lot of words, but always, I remember it's the demonstration. At the end of the day, our children are going to remember far more what was demonstrated than anything that came out of our mouths. And there again, looking to the leaders, Daniel, like those good, the leaders that have the, that inspired energy about them take full accountability for when they fall down too, and they own it, and they're quick to share that because, they're human as well. I mean, so that's a powerful demonstration. And that's, I've done my very best to do that to our daughter that's on the podcast with us and my son. Hey, there's places where I fall down too, but to be transparent with that, that's what a good leader does, that really does. And then, and so that's our whole body of work is figure out how to clean up your messes quickly and get back to the good stuff. Don't hang out, in a mess making machine. Learn how to clean it up effectively, and let's get back to the good stuff.
Mm-hmm. So that's the S, start with self, and starter. So let's go to the T, take it slowly.
Yeah, take it slowly. And I might even put both together because of the time. So take it slowly and age appropriate setup. So take it slowly is the idea that if we follow the Joneses, if we go with the flow of culture, then we're going too fast when it comes to kids and tech. Not only too fast because it doesn't follow the recommendations of, the National Pediatric Society, like the official recommendations, but just because it's not great for them because they're still developing their brain. And I've put all that kind of stuff in the beginning part. And look, one of the analogies I would say is, like when I was in Vanuatu, this is many years ago, one of my friends fell in the water and we were swimming and he got caught in a riptide and it started to pull him out. And it was really, really strong. And he was a good swimmer, but he couldn't get back. And it took us about an hour to slowly coach and guide and support him back in. And we couldn't jump out because we didn't have the ability to kind of manage the riptide ourselves. So thank goodness he was okay. And it was just a big shakeup. But I feel like we're in a culture where the riptide is definitely swinging too fast, particularly for kids, and commercially, deliberately pushing kids too fast into interactive technologies. And therefore, it's really important that we actually go against the flow to a certain extent. And it's not to reject the wonders and beauty of the online world. It's actually to slow kids down so that they'll be better at using technology when they're older. Because my heartbeat is that kids will develop a healthy brain, the ability to self-regulate, to know themselves, to make eye contact with humans, to enjoy their bodies and to have a sense of self, in order to then use technologies well as they get older. But using some technologies too early, particularly iPads and iPhones and interactive technologies, online games, particularly when they're really young, they're designed to ramp up the lizard part of the brain, the fight, flight, or freeze part. And the research is showing that when kids spend too much time using those types of leaning forward interactive technologies, it looks like they're learning, but they're not actually. They're ramping up their anxiety systems and they're reducing their ability to grow the prefrontal cortex, the parts of their brain that actually is needed to be a healthy adult. So, so basically the principle is there's no right age to give your kid a phone, or there's no right age to give your kid an iPad. I mean, there's a wrong age. Like, don't do it before the recommendations, which is like no screens before 2 and no more than an hour a day up to 5 years old, etc. If you possibly can. But the key is try to go slower than everyone around you, and that really sucks. Like, as a parent, it really, really sucks to feel like you have to say no or not yet, when actually most of the kids who are in year 5, year 6, already are getting devices like phones for themselves, and that's really hard. That's the tough love bit. And in the end of the chapter, like my last part of the framework is rely on others, which means do it in community. And one of the things I'm doing in this book is I'm actually partnering with school communities and getting every single new parent a book, so that rather than being the only parent whose child doesn't have Snapchat or TikTok by the time they're entering high school, well, the principal, the teachers, the parents, everyone is saying actually the research says it's bad for our kids' brains before really 16, but let's say 13, and let's create a counterculture where you're the only kid who does have it, when you're young. And that's going to set our kids up so that when they start using these highly addictive technologies, their brain has at least the ability to start to self-regulate and reflect on the technologies they're using, so that the wrestlers are more like you and I have, where we know we get addicted and we're struggling and we hate the way we're doing it, but we still have a reference point to life before we became addicted. We have a reference point for what it looked like to actually have a conversation face to face, or to actually be able to climb a tree or fall down off a bike and get back up again. And that reference point is very, very important to help kids then regulate later on.
No, I totally agree. You're causing me to remember an analogy that you used in the book, looking back on history, where we used to smoke in the hospitals and there was ashtrays that the nurse would bring you. And, it was just a very common thing. And as we look back, we would go, that is crazy. How in the world could we be able to do that? And I love that you mentioned we're going to do that with tech too, going, what were we thinking, right? There's so much that we're learning now as we go. Of course, we're bumping into problems and challenges with tech now with our kids. We just didn't know, and that really truly is a limitation of a human being. We don't know what we don't know, and we figure it out as we go. We truly do. So that's how evolution, it always evolves to a better place, but sometimes it doesn't look and feel like it, right? As we kind of go through these ebbs and flows of our learning curves, it's things that seem so obvious looking back just weren't that obvious while we were going through it, so
I really feel for parents as well, because we're caught in this in-between state where everyone's using technology and we need to use it, and these interactive technologies, and then AI is the future, and yet the research always takes 20 years to catch up. And so what we're trying to do is make informed decisions that aren't radical and overreactive, without the research, the longitudinal research to say, actually, there really is a good reason not to give girls social media before they're 13. There really is a good reason not to protect all kids from pornography, for a lot longer. But I think there is enough research now to be able to start to at least put good guidelines in place, which is go slower than those around you. And the age appropriate setup is like, when you do give your child their own device, like a phone, well, then don't give it to them out of the box. Make it a dumb phone to start with. Take it off games. Use parental controls to make sure that they don't have, let's say, social media, if that's what you agree with them. Have a digital contract so you've got good boundaries in place to start with and good expectations. And maybe put some screen time limits around it so that the internet turns off at 9 o'clock or 8:30 at night and doesn't turn on until 7 o'clock. You can change the phone so it's not a fully fledged adult phone for the adult world, and have the types of conversations and boundaries in place that you need so that your kids can learn to use these devices, demonstrate a sense of control and understanding about how to use them. And then as they demonstrate that trust and maturity, you increase their freedom until they get to the stage where they have a fully fledged adult device that can access absolutely anything, just like you and I. And hopefully at that point, they will be more equipped to be able to use those very powerful tools.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's really great advice. The regular talks, I think, is important. That's part of your starter framework. That's the R. And I think, it's an ongoing conversation. In fact, as we're talking, I have to just be honest, what I continuously go back to is conversations about sex. Sex is something that's normal and healthy and natural and wonderful for us adults. But if we get exposed to it or don't know how to manage it, or we don't have regular talks about it, we don't know how to meet it ourselves, it very much falls in line as we're teaching our children about their human sexuality and stepping into that and how to make good decisions around it. It follows suit with many of the dialogues that we have with kids and families. So I don't know. I felt the need to say that, right? It's a very similar conversation. And I think even in our conversation today, I'm realizing that a lot of what you're talking about applies there too, so you get a 2 for 1.
Definitely. Yeah. We in Australia, we have a campaign, Talk Soon, Talk Often, which is about sex and making sure that sex and conversations about sexuality and sex is part of, like you said, everyday conversations. We absolutely need the same principle for tech at a young age, and to help kids start to critique tech and to recognize the addictive nature if you overuse tech, and to also enjoy the wonders of tech, and to talk during family movie nights and shared interactions and co-watching about the values that they're seeing in tech that actually align with your family values or that actually don't match reality. Like, again, how hard is it being a parent nowadays? But tech is part of the Talk Soon, Talk Often suite. And obviously you don't have to do it alone. You can do it with others as well if you can.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on the T, which is tech healthy rhythms. But I don't want us to miss the opportunity to encourage adventures, right? I think that's such an important thing, not only for kids, but for adults. I think the older we get and we start to climb the ladder of age, the more we minimize the need for play and adventures and to continue to explore and express ourselves in those ways. We become, all responsible and stuff. And we think that all of that stuff needs to fall away. And absolutely research shows that's not good for us at any age. So we can't miss encourage adventures. What are some thoughts you have around the adventure part?
Yeah. So look, it comes out of that vision I have, vision I think we all have for what a human can be. And, the whole creating a tech healthy culture in your family and in your kids isn't just about the tech. It's about what is the greater yes that you're saying the no to. If you're saying no to more screens, what is the greater yes? And part of that is having adventures. And by adventures, I don't just mean skydiving and bungee jumping. I'm talking about anything that is unplugged, where you're pushing kids out of their comfort zone, you're experiencing fresh air, and you're experiencing relationships and a sense of life together, whether that, be jumping on the trampoline together or bushwalking or maybe going and playing laser tag. It doesn't have to be tech free, but it's about experiencing the breadth of life and the wonder of what can happen. And it's so funny because I'm often asked as a productivity consultant, about the fact that, so if you disconnect from tech and unplug, it'll make you more productive. And that is true. The research definitely says that. However, I don't think we should have to justify having a coffee with our spouse or walking on the beach or reading a book that we enjoy. We shouldn't have to justify that by whether it makes us more economically viable or whether it's productive. And that's the same with our kids. We need to recapture the vision of what it means to be a human and to be happy and healthy and whole. And that has to involve being offline, because we become diminished if our entire existence is staring at a glowing rectangle. And so the glowing rectangle is part of what it means to enjoy life, but it can't constrain or define it. And that's what I mean by encourage adventures. When I asked my kids on a bushwalk once, what is the best experience of life you've ever had? I just thought, I'll just ask.
Wow, that's a great question.
And, is a 10-year-old going to be able to answer that? I didn't know. And they had an immediate answer, which is amazing, right? I mean, adults would require longer to think about it. And one of them said, I jumped on the trampoline once with my neighbor. It was so fun. And another one said, we went to Grindelwald, which was actually it's a bit like a National Lampoon's kind of cheesy Swiss village. It was pretty cheap and pretty dirty. And, as in, dirty. Yeah. And we played, I'm thinking the Australianism's going to America. And we and we played mini golf, and my wife hit the ball, and my younger son was running with a net because he was too young to play golf, and the ball landed in it. And we yelled at him because he was in the middle of the green and he ran off with the ball. And we thought it was so funny. That was her best experience of life. Like, we took her to Disneyland in Paris, and the best experience was like National Lampoons. But when I think about it, they were all like that. They were involved being with people that they loved, outdoors usually, doing something that was very simple. And it was relational. It was those kind of aha spiritual kairos moments, those beautiful moments where, in my tradition, I'd say the kingdom of heaven came to earth, and so none of them were playing Minecraft. Do you know what I mean? And I know that when I think about my experiences, and when I've asked parents, I do parenting seminars, and when I ask parents, what's the best experience of life you can remember, it's never that I got my inbox to 0, or that, or that I happened to win the world championship of, I don't know, Minecraft. Like it's just simple everyday stuff, which is either because you tried really hard at something and you achieved it, it was a spiritual experience, or it was deeply relational. But, and the reason I want to finish with that with regards to Encourage Adventures is you want your kids to have the experiences of life that will actually make them remember life fully and joyfully, and I guarantee it won't be the times that they have online. And therefore we need to major in the things that they will remember as their best experiences of life, because that is the best experience of humanity, and minor on some of what they really, really, really want for themselves. Social media, online games, more and more time on a screen. They may want it, but tough love says that if I'm raising adults, not children, I want them to be rich, joyful, full, wholehearted humans who don't regret the life they lived, because they lived a real life, not just some commercial version of it that was packaged and given to them to make them feel good for a time.
I love that. Well said. Gosh, I don't think there's anything I can add to that. Daniel, thank you so much for being here with us.
And share with us, where can people find more about you and your awesome body of work, Daniel?
So I have a website just for the book. So it's called raisinghumans.au. The AU is for Australia. There's actually a whole heap of stuff there. In fact, if you go to raisinghumans.au/gift, I should have said that, then you can get a whole lot of stuff. You can get screen time recommendations as an infographic. You can get the 100 kind of fun activities to do outside of a screen for free. There's a whole lot of interviews with world experts around the things we've talked about, and also a summary of the book as an infographic, and a bunch of interviews and a whole lot of other stuff. So feel free to head there. If you're interested in my business work and productivity, then head to spacemakers.com.au.
I love it. Daniel, thank you so much. It's always great to spend some time with you here in the Love Shack.
We'd have you over for dinner if you weren't quite so far away.
I will take that up. Tom, I'm going to remember that. And when I'm in the States next, you'll definitely.
You absolutely better make it over here to California so we can.
I would love that.
We could go on for wonderful deep conversation. I know that
for sure. Okay.
Thank you, Daniel.
Goodbye for now. We're going to actually take a corner, and we're going to step into our Follow the Fun moment. And it was inspired by Daniel, actually, and his starter protocol for how to step in and start thinking about these things around raising children and tech, and even around governing ourselves with tech. And so today's Follow the Fun is plan an adventure. Make it something that's outdoors, something that's physical. And even maybe something that's new for you, a new activity or a new place to visit that maybe you haven't done but been thinking about for a while. I know for you and I, babe, it's, snowshoeing. We haven't done any snowshoeing since we've arrived in California.
And we got lots of snow. If you're listening live, we have been, the heavens have opened with rain and snow here in actually all over California, but Northern California for sure.
And maybe for some of you, it might be doing that hike or that zip line, or try out some climbing, or, there's so many. And then it could be something simple too. It could be something that you've been intending to do, in my case, spend some time with the grandkids and I recently just went to a trampoline park with one of my grandkids, and I was talking all big and bad. And then I walked in and went, whoa, I am scared. I am literally scared. I don't know if I can do all of this. And it was a really good challenge for me. And it was an incredible moment for my grandson and I to share with each other. And I discovered so many things about my grandson and myself. So these are moments that, as Daniel said, make being human in the human experience beautiful, worthwhile, joyful. It creates those benchmarks where we're grateful to have the human experience. So I encourage you to take on an adventure this week with yourself, with your loved ones, and then tell us about it. I'd love to hear what you ended up choosing as your adventure. And as always, we have a song that we close the song with that isn't
Close the show with?
Or what did I say?
Close the song with.
Oh, close the song, because I'm thinking of a song. I apologize.
That's all right.
Close the show with.
Close the show with a song. Every week, every episode. Excuse me.
So today's song is Slow Down, and the singer is Nicole Nordman, and she talks about just slowing down and enjoying the moments of being a human being and being a parent, and encouraging our children to do that. And I just feel like it's so appropriate with all that we've talked about today. And parents, I'm going to say this as we close, give yourself a pat on the back. Being a parent is the probably most challenging and most rewarding job that we have and that we face. And it does greatly impact our relationships with our lovers. And so if by chance you're struggling in that and you need a little support and you need some skills and ideas about how to better handle that and navigate that, that's what we do here at Stacey Bartley. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to support you in any way that we can. And
we're going to talk about that inside the Better Love Club.
Yep, you can get that inside the Better Love Club, along with a whole host of other things that affect our relationships. So I want to invite you to come and join us and be a part of our community over here at the Better Love Club, where we cheer each other on and support each other in these conversations that matter when it comes to ourselves and our families. So that's a wrap for today. If you have a conversation you'd love to hear us have in the Love Shack, or you have somebody that you feel like we need to talk to, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We would love to hear that. We're always looking to have the conversations that you value the most. Thank you so much for spending some of your time today with us here inside the Love Shack. A shout out to Daniel one more time. He's an incredible human being and has so much wisdom to share with us. It's always a gift when we have him here with us inside the Love Shack. So goodbye for now. Forward to connecting with you again soon, I'm sure.
Bye-bye now.
Okay, everybody, time to go. We got to close the doors to the Love Shack for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Come back next week, though, and join us for another edition of Love Shack Live with Tom and Stacey Bartley.